works for us.
Okay.
All right, cool. So I think we're live. It's going to take a second for some of the folks to pop up on the screen and join us.
Okay.
But if you hopped over, if you'd like to look on your phone, we should be live in Mortgage Loan Officer Network right now. So thanks again for joining. This is Tim Pascarella, a good friend of mine. We do work together. Ross Mortgage, you see our shirts here. I brought Tim on today, not to pitch the company or anything like that, but to share one of the great strategies that I learned from him and that I know a lot of the folks in our company use. And it's quite simply just finding a way for the agents to win. And it's really applicable in this type of market with limited inventory and changing markets and needing to specialize in things, all those thoughts that are constantly bouncing around in our head. So I just asked him to perhaps share a few minutes with you guys today, show some of the things that he has become well known for, that he teaches agents on a regular basis, and that enabled him to weather the storm in tough markets and set himself apart in the good markets. Does that sound about right, Tim?
It is. That's about what we do. I mean, it's all about finding ways for the realtor to win bids, and sell more homes per year.
Cool, man. So, thought process is the first thing on this. A lot of lenders turn around and run the other way, right? And you've always approached this as with a completely different mindset. So before we get into how the nuts and bolts of what you're teaching the realtors, what is your mindset with this? Why would you run into a product everyone else is running away from?
For that reason. Same reason people should, go to the scene of the crime when buying a stock. I mean, what people are afraid of doesn't mean it's not a needed commodity. When I really got into this was in 2010, when I would go on these chat rooms, which aren't nearly as cool as they are now. I think that was MySpace back then. But the bottom line is everyone was complaining about how I can't get any of these loans closed because of the condition of the home. And I found a need, and the need was a loan that could finance the unfinanceable. So that's really kind of how I got into it. I'd like to say that it was strategic and all that, but it was more desperation. I needed to find a product that I could close homes with. And that's how I got into it. And that's why I feel like over the last 4 or 5 years, this loan has gotten less and less popular amongst all of us. And I think that going into this small inventory or shortage of inventory that we have now, I think this loan becomes popular again.
Absolutely. Well, and we watch all this chatter in the background with Amazon, Zillow, and Keller trying to take a piece of the pie. And we all know that they're going to be going after the simple slam dunk A business, and that there's margin compression. People are making less and less money on those loans. Do you find that the 2 or 3K and the renovation folks are out there rate shopping you all day long?
Never. No, nobody shops around. First, you have to understand what this 203K, the renovation, all renovation loans can do for you. And it's all about how you present it to the realtor and especially the consumer. I've done plenty of renovation loans where, they could have gotten a better rate, so to speak, somewhere else. But what the 203K and the renovation loans offer them, you can't beat that deal. When you go buy a fixer upper or a house that isn't turnkey, right? And you need to put $40,000 into this. If you were to finance and you don't have $40,000, again, I have never told anyone to get into a renovation loan that could afford to pay cash for it. This is strictly for the people who can't afford it, or don't have the cash, I should say. So $40,000 with today's rates is going to cost you about $210 a month, $220 roughly around there. $40,000 to finance through a local lumberyard or a local contractor or anyone else that's financing, you're talking $900 to $1,000 a month payment on a $40,000 short-term loan. So it is the most affordable construction financing, in my opinion, that you can do. So nobody shops the rate. When I show them the power of the renovation loans and what they can have when they're done with it, no one's going to shop around for it. I always tell my customers the same thing. You buy a house, you build a home. So that's kind of what I've always lived by.
And that, this I don't know if this is end of presentation or something to talk about now, but a lot of these customers fall into that lender for life category. You end up doing multiple transactions with them. They become some of your best advocates and referral sources.
I promise you, any 203K you did from the years 2012 to 2014, if you mine your database like you should, you've refinanced them. Guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
You've gotten them out of mortgage insurance. You've gotten, they got equity in the home. Their rate wasn't that great. The only reason you didn't refinance someone you did a 203K between 2012 and 2014 is because someone else did.
Well, and that's some folks that I talk to come back and say, well, I don't like that renovation financing because every time I do one, the client's mad at me. Well, obviously they're not going to come back to you refinance if they're mad. So, let's talk about how you make it a smooth process and how you work through this with the realtors. And I know you've got a presentation kind of in the background that you use for realtors. I'll try to shut my mouth a little bit and let you kind of take the reins.
It's okay. I've done this presentation so many times. I by no means am I going to bore the audience by going through the entire thing. That's for sure. But I'll go over some slides. But the biggest thing you got to do is you got to build your team. You got to build your team, and each team member has to buy into the renovation program as much as you do. All right. What that means is, when I was doing the most I ever did in a year was almost 200 in 2012. But I had
closed 200 renovation loans in 2012.
Yeah.
Yourself, your team.
Yes. My team. Yeah.
You were the only licensed LO on that team.
Yeah. But you gotta remember too, I had 3 realtors that loved the program. I had 2 contractors that loved the program, and they probably were part of almost 80% of those transactions. So it's building the team that's confident enough in the program. And my slogan used to always say, if you come to a 203K with me, you won't even know I'm doing one. And the reason being is because they had the contractor who knew what he was doing. I had the realtor who knew what he was doing. And the best part back then is those houses now, it's a little bit of cheaters back then because you couldn't finance those houses any other way. Those were during bank-owned eras where you had bank-owned properties in Michigan and no one would winterize the property. These were homes that you weren't getting any other way. And up where we are in Michigan, we were inundated. In 2012, did you do any other purchase besides bank-owned? They were all bank-owned, So it was a little bit of a good situation for renovation loans back then. So that kind of helped out my numbers. But I think it's really important, and I tell this to all the realtors, the contractor is the key piece to this. You got to have it's not just about having a good contractor. He or she has to know how to do the 203K, because the holdup can be the bid itself, just how you write it, what needs to be in there, what to say, what not to say, and all that stuff, so that you can make it a smooth process. Because if the bid's good, the rest of the process credit's credit, income's incomes, assets assets. The rest of it's pretty easy. The maximum mortgage worksheet does the math for you. You just fill in the blanks.
So what are the pitfalls though on the mortgage worksheet and the contractor side? I always, and I know the answer to this because you and I talk so much, but how do you prevent the contractor from dragging their feet, or from multiple bids, or from the underwriter just not agreeing with what the contractor's saying? In the back and forth on how much a repair should cost?
That's a great question. First and foremost, if you keep it to a streamline, you don't have to have a HUD consultant. So that's number one. Number two, it's imperative that I used to always tell everyone, get at least 2 bids. But number 3, it's all in the detail. I think the biggest thing you have to do, and this is what the contractors that I worked with, is we gave the buyers the reality way upstream. We did not leave anything out. There were no surprises. If they were going to do electrical and plumbing, we would tell them, hey, you got to have a 15% contingency. Do you understand what that means? Do you know how that works? We had a whole script that we would do that we just never varied from. And it was always on day one. The minute they would call and say, hey, I'm interested in these rehab loans, we would go over the blood and guts of it. Because I think what makes people scared is, I think a lot of loan officers know what they are, but they really don't know much about them. And that therefore they're telling their customers only what they know about them, which I think is deadly.
Which we run into a bit on the VA loan as well.
Right. I think it's imperative that if you're going to do renovation loans, be a master, and you could never be a master. But I don't run. I think it was AJ said this, and I loved it. Alex Jimenez said something about you're not an expert, you're a specialist or something like that, because an expert knows everything and you're always learning. I'm sure I butchered that, but I really liked it when he said it. But just you constantly have to be learning on this product, because the minute someone would ask me about these loans, I sat down, I told them the good, the bad, and the ugly. But the cool thing about it is throughout the process, nothing was a surprise. Nothing was, when they, the biggest one you get is, I hear this all the time. You told me 35,000 on Streamline 203Ks. You told me 35,000. Well, now they're telling me it's got to be a full because they did 35,000. Well, no, we talked about this. I told you 29,400, and that when I add the contingency and everything else into it, we'll be at 35. So you can't have a bid for 35. It's just these things that you have to do up front that can really throw a monkey wrench into all of it. I mean, that's $6,000 almost. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If all of a sudden they're at 35 and I got to tell them they got to drop this $6,000, now the contractor's not going to understand why. The buyer's not going to understand why. If you already got it appraised, you got to have it reappraised because now you're pulling some stuff away from the bid. I mean, it can be a mess if you don't tell them everything up front.
I think you told me once too, and I know this helped me out a lot on several transactions I did in 2014 and 15, that you wanted to make sure that you had that bid and that you put your eyes on it before you had your team order the appraisal.
Always.
You as the project manager, as the LO, who's what do we always say, is the highest paid. I mean, you're the president, CEO of your own business. So, take a look at those contractor bids yourself. Train yourself on what to look for. Don't start saying that's not my job. That's the underwriter's job. That's a recipe for failure.
No, you got to look at it. You know how many times I've had people come in with a $5,000 bid and it was waterproofing? Well, what happens when you waterproof a basement? You mess with the foundation walls. Well, guess what happens when you mess with the foundation walls? You just flipped it to a full. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's you've got to know everything there is to know about this program if you want to be good at it. And then the beautiful part about it is, even today, when I feel like it's a good program to combat the bad inventory, there's still people running from it. So if you are actually really good at it today, you're going to do a ton of these. What a better opportunity to deal with the 20 offers. It's ridiculous right now. I mean, if you've got a turnkey, I got clients that are saying, why bother? Well, I got 2 clients over the weekend that finally said, you know what? They called the realtor, like, screw it. This is the location I want. Go find me the crappiest house in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I'll just do this rehab loan. God knows it'll appraise. Just find me the crappiest one because nobody's offering on that one.
Yeah, well, we just had that conversation with the veteran on Friday, and it's not. He's been bidding 5 to 10% over on almost every property. He's losing the cash. He's losing the 30 to 40% down. He's trying to be the highest offer, but he's literally getting outbid. And,
it's hard right now.
So we had to talk about the reno, and we got one he might end up using that. We're not 100% sure, but at least we had the conversation, and it's still, even if he doesn't use the rental loan, the fact that we know how it works and we can talk to him about it makes us look better than every other lender. And that.
So this screen, I always like this screen because when I talk to realtors, I always say the same thing. I go, and I always tell them, how many of you have ever walked in a house and had a client say, oh man, this is perfect. This is the right neighborhood. It's the right sidewalks. I'm close to the park. It's in the right school zone. Everything's great. But you know what? I'm 1 bedroom short. So let's get back in your high priced SUV that guzzles a lot of gas and let's go find another house because this one's one house short. Now imagine if every time you heard that, you could combat the word but. You could say, I know you don't like it, but I got an idea for you. What if I told you could have this house, add a bedroom with a certain loan, not only that, add value to the home because you're going to buy it as a 2-bedroom, but we're going to make it a 3, and I don't have to go show you any other house. We can just write an offer right here, right now. What would you say to that? I mean, I've told thousands of realtors that line right there, and I'm telling you, I've done hundreds of loans because of that line right there. Just stop looking at other houses. If this truly is everything you want except 1 bedroom, I got a way we can fix that.
What I really like there is that you're training the realtors who don't necessarily get a lot of sales and marketing training. You're giving them closure lines. You're giving them a forced choice question. Like, hey, if I could do this, would you want to move forward? I mean, that's classic Heck, you learn that on a used car sales lot, but it's
If I could buff out this bumper.
If I could make this work for you today.
Exactly. Are we in? Absolutely.
I guess I know this presentation revolves around 2 or 3K, but would you say that if you master the K, the other rental products are really a breeze? Just a couple minor variations, perhaps conventional. You don't have the 10% in the appraisal. VA.
Well, I was just gonna say the biggest advantage to the K over the home style is the 10% buffer. I've saved FHA deals of perfect homes switching them to Ks. So imagine this, right? You're buying a $300,000 home, right? Or call it $250,000. You're buying a $250,000 home. And the appraisal comes in $8,000 light, right? Buyer still wants it, but doesn't have the $8,000. Seller is in a seller's market, so he or she says, "I'm putting it back on the market. I know I can get $250,000. I don't care what it appraises for," right? I've added paint, a roof, something that costs $5,000 or $6,000, right? So I'm $8,000 short. But I got a $25,000 buffer because I can go to 110 on FHA. So I've literally added I think I added paint one time, a $4,000 paint job to paint the entire house. All of a sudden, I didn't have to do anything. It just worked. The guy got what he wanted for it. The subject to appraisal came in fine, and I literally saved the deal by switching it to a 203K, and no one had to be out any extra cash or anything. It was just you can definitely use this to your advantage for sure.
So pro trick on that is to have your conventional appraiser roster set up so that most of those appraisers are FHA appraisers, right? So you don't have to worry so much about the flip, right?
Every single one of ours are both. Yeah, yep. Absolutely. There is no reason to have just a conventional appraiser out there.
Very smart. So awesome. See, those kind of tips are I just love it. I've seen you do, you've used that to save VA deals too, haven't you? Where you, I believe, flip the VA deal so that they could go over the maximum 144 and then ended up refinancing them later, something like that. I know you saved a couple.
I did that once. Actually, I did that once with the help of Jay McMakin. Mm-hmm. I did that once because we had what was it? It was
you couldn't buy in the first tier because they had a foreclosure and they knocked out the first tier and you needed to go over 144.
Yeah, and we were at 136 or something like that. So we flipped it to a 203K, did it, kept it for 6 months, and then refinanced them into a VA loan, get out of the MI.
Yeah, so
a lot of things worked right there too. I mean, the rates stayed. I mean, everything kind of fell into place on that one. But I mean, to be quite honest with you, he wasn't upset with the product anyways. I mean, he got to do something. I think he did a kitchen, so he put 10 to 15 grand into it. It was a great buy. Mm-hmm. I mean,
and this was way back. VA rental wasn't even on the market back then. Nobody had it.
Right. Well, if VA was around, I don't know if it was around or wasn't around, but there definitely sure wasn't a lot of people doing them. That's for sure.
Yeah. Except maybe John David Adams. I feel like he's been doing them since 1998 or something like that.
I know. Yes, that is true. That is true. He's the wizard.
So for some of the technical stuff for the LOs, I mean, again, I know you teach the agents this all the time, and it's apparent as we talk to you that it just rolls off your tongue. You what are the steps, right? You learn the product, then you kind of master it, and then you teach it. That's when you really mastered it. So what are the things that you're teaching agents and even the LOs on your team, out of this PowerPoint or just in your head that we're still maybe missing here? Some of the tech stuff that people screw up on.
Sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is I've always taught this as a sales tool and nothing more, right? I teach yellows how to master the absolute program itself so they can sound intelligent. But when I teach the realtors, I'm simply teaching them how to close more deals. I don't want them, my presentation, as you can see, as I'm going through this kind of slowly and surely, I'm not teaching them the inner workings of how to do an FHA loan. I'll tell you right now, if you had to start from a blank slate, learning how to do an FHA loan is 10 times harder than learning how to do an FHA 203K. It's the problem is we all get so good at the FHA loan, we think the 203K is this major add-on that's so hard, and it's really not. You use more brain power to learn how to do the FHA loan than you did adding on the 203K, So, I mean, the bottom line on these loans is there's two types of 203K loans. And renovation loans itself. Now, again, the home style loan is a great product, except the only problem right now with the home style loan, you really do need that 10% buffer. At least that's what we're experiencing because of how high these offers are. I mean, if you go pay top dollar for a home right now and then go dump 40 grand into it, I don't care what you do to that house, it's going to have a tough time appraising, So unless you're adding square footage or bedrooms or bathrooms, unless you're adding those three things, redoing a kitchen it's just you're paying so much for the home already. Redoing a kitchen isn't going to do much for you right now. So the inner workings of the selling the home as a loan officer's point of view is just using it to close more deals throughout the year and making sure that everybody understands the difference of the appraisals that we use, the subject to versus the as is, all the tricks you can do. Like a lot of people don't understand that you can roll in 6 months worth of, I think that's on the next slide. So you can roll in 6 months worth of payments. So if you have someone who's approved with their current home and the new home, they can stay in their current home for up to 6 months and not have to pay two mortgage payments. You can put in all the permits. You can put in all the architectural drawings. There's so many things that make this such a good advantage for the buyer. It's just a matter of convincing the realtor basically that it's a good program and he or she's going to sell more homes using it.
Now, I know in your travels that you talk to a lot of loan officers just in the community in Michigan and all over the country. Lately, I know you've been flying around a lot. Are you seeing many differences in this product across a mortgage company type? The direct lenders, the correspondents versus the brokers versus the banks. I mean, what is you seeing? I mean, obviously, perhaps we're biased a little as a correspondent direct lender, but I know you have friends in every single model.
Yeah, I think that if you don't have the infrastructure at the home office, it's very difficult. I don't hear, and that's not to say they're not, but I don't hear a lot of brokers doing these because I don't hear of a lot of wholesalers doing them. And again, I'm sure there are. I'm just telling you what I hear.
A couple, but again, I don't really know what their numbers are offhand.
Yeah. And as far as correspondents and banks doing them and stuff like that, banks stumble through them just because there's not a demand for them. They don't do a ton of them. I think the key to these programs for any lender or LO out there is, do you have the back office, or is the back office prepared to do these loans? Because I mean, again, you got to disperse funds at closings on streamlines, not on fulls. You have to. I'm telling you right now, what scares off a lot of lenders is the appraisal and the bid matching and the comparables. I mean, let's face it, it's hard to do a subject to. I mean, you're basing your appraisal on something that hasn't even happened yet. That's not the easiest thing to do. Ask any new construction appraiser who has to do it based on plans and specs. It's a pain, So you've got to have the back office savviness to be able to help the loan officers do these effectively.
Well, you have to have like a solid post-closing plan as well. I mean, you gotta have.
Well, yeah, you're definitely involved. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for anyone else, but we're involved all the way until final disbursement. So we have designated people who this is all they do, is they just deal with the contractors, the HUD consultants, and the investors in order to make sure this is a smooth process all the way to the end. Because like you said, lender for life, right? We do not want the last thing these guys to think about is, who the hell did these guys leave you with?
Yep.
Yeah,
so if you take care of them during that phase, like you said, I mean, you never want to promise a refinance. You want to educate and perhaps suggest that they need to come back to you and what the timing would be. But if you do a great job, a high percentage of them come back in 6 to 24 months.
You're going to get their next home. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Cool, man. So what do we miss here?
Well, this is the steps to a successful 203K, and you could cross out 203K and put any renovation loan product into it. A lot of times what the realtors don't understand is, how do I deal with negotiating this? And I always have to remind them, look, you're negotiating the house as is. Do your job, negotiate the house as is, and whatever value you come up with, it's up to us after you negotiated that to deal with the rest, right? So get a fully executed PA where the seller and buyer have agreed on the as-is price of the house. Then the next step is for the buyer to go get a contractor and go in and get all the bids. I tell everyone the same thing. I don't want Uncle Joe, from up north coming down here and doing this work. We're gonna get a licensed and insured contractor to do the work, not family related. They're gonna get W-9'd on it. They're gonna be taxed on it. Totally above board deal here. Once you get all the bids, then you do the application. Do not do the application before you get all the bids. So whatever, you get the bids, you do the maximum mortgage worksheet, you do the application, and then from that point forward, if you did it properly, this is like any other loan. I tell everyone asks me, how fast do you close loans? Right now we're closing loans in 26 and a half days. I tell everyone the same thing. Well, how fast can you close 203Ks? I always say the same thing. How fast can you get me a bid? What do you mean? Fast as you can give me the bid, I can do it in 26 days. Once I have the bid, my process is the exact same. Mm-hmm. This is a different type of loan, which luckily for us, we have underwriters that underwrite them all the time and know what they're doing.
Well, I like how you kind of stopped in the slide and talked a little bit about borrower qualifying. And, for me, a best practice, I've seen some LOs fail at this step at various points in my career. Perhaps I did once or twice.
I'm sure I did too.
You find a borrower who technically qualifies, but they barely qualify, and their DTI is kind of stretched before they start adding the renovations on top of that. Mm-hmm. They're perhaps cash poor, and they're getting gifts, maxing out DTI. You're pushing. Have you actually done the math to make sure they're going to have enough cash to close and the DTIs are going to fit in your program guidelines, especially if your scores are a little bit low, before you get all the way to the end? Well, not even to the end, but to the point of where they apply, they got the contractor bids, and then you're sitting there going, hey, this is a refer. I don't know what to do.
That's an awesome question. So and I'm glad you reminded me of it. What we always do when it comes to qualifying the borrowers is we qualify them based on the repairs. So if I qualify a borrower and I tell them his max loan amount, his or her max loan amount is $200, I inform them, you realize that means if you find a $200,000 house, you're not doing a 203K. Mm-hmm. So if you find a house that needs $50,000 worth of work, then I hope you're paying $150 for it. So that is a really good question. And what I've done on all my 203 FHAs, I have not done this on all my conventional loans, but on my 203Ks, FHA, all my FHA pre-approvals, I inform them, even if they don't come for a renovation loan, I say to them, hey, you're approved for a max loan amount of $175. Just so you know, if you find something for $140 and you want to do a renovation loan, you can put $35,000 into it. But just know that if you find a house for $175, we can't do any renovation loans. So I actually tell them, even if they don't ask, because I love them. I love them for two reasons. One, I think they're great for first-time home buyers. I have seen it too many times in my career where a 22-year-old kid just gets his first job. He's so excited. He goes, buys a house in Royal Oak, Michigan. He's just super stoked. I stay in touch with him. Everything's great. And 1 year later, the furnace blows and the roof dies. He doesn't have $7,000 to fix that. He doesn't have it.
He's like, oh, do I have a home warranty? I'm going to call the realtor.
Exactly. I say all the time, if you're a first-time home buyer, if that roof looks even a little bit shoddy, or if the furnace or the air conditioner, those are the three things that can really wreck you when it comes to out of money pocket. Out of those tons of 203Ks I did back in the day, I can't tell you how many times we added a furnace, an air conditioner, and a roof on a first-time home buyer, just so that he or she knew for the next 15 years, the last thing they had to worry about is the roof, furnace, or air conditioner.
Not to cut you off, but this reminds me of something that you told me a couple months ago. And the timing to me is perfect, because I just watched a group of realtors from one of those real estate Facebook groups, talking about how, conventional appraisals are better. You can always close the house as is. Oh my gosh, these other products, and we don't want to fix the roofs, and we just want to move the house as is. You gave me a stat, and I don't know if you remember it, a few months ago, the percentage of buyers that are not necessarily going conventional, that could potentially buy the houses if they were just fixed up because of things like that, because of items that will perhaps not pass some of the repair or minimum property requirements for different loan programs. And, I believe your line to the real estate agents was, why would you want to market this home to such a small percentage of the buyers and reduce the pool for your sellers?
Yeah, no,
that's was, but
I tell them it was, now it's a lot lower than it was before. I can only give you Ross Mortgage's stats, but Ross Mortgage's pre-approvals right now are at about 30. We used to be at about 46% FHA. So I used to tell these realtors all the time, I go, by you not accepting an FHA offer, if you had 100 qualified borrowers to buy your home sitting in this room, you just told 46 of them to get lost. So always accept an FHA 203K. Now our stats are a little less. They're about 32%, but I still think that's crazy. So if you say, come look at this house, but only bring me a conventional offer, you're telling 32 people out of every 100 people that want to come look at that house, don't bother. Why wouldn't you accept an FHA 203K? Why wouldn't you open it up to 32 more people? It makes all the sense in the world. Not to mention conventional buyers are least likely to buy non-turnkey homes anyways.
That whole concept of the cash buyer and the conventional buyer with 20% down tends to want to negotiate a little bit more on price.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Whereas your FHA 203K buyer just wants to get in the darn home.
Yep. And again, they have 10% to work with. So if the house is not quite there, you got a little bit of padding. Yep,
absolutely. Absolutely. So this is a good slide here. This is the fact that 1 to 4 units can be increased, decreased while conforming to zone units. This is a fancy way of saying you can do this on duplexes and tries. So you could live in one side, redo the whole thing, rent out the other side. So I thought that was really cool. This 1 year or older, this just basically means you can't use a renovation loan on a new construction home. This is everything. I have like 6 slides on everything you can do. What I should have done is just told you the things you can't do, which is basically hot tubs and pools. You can't add a pool. However, you get a $1,500 allowance if you want to fix a pool. What we do mostly here in Michigan is mostly just kitchen, baths, and basements. Do a ton of finishing of basements for extra living space and a ton of kitchens and baths. This goes into the contingency reserve, which I was talking about. If for those who don't know what contingency is, in all these renovation loans, whatever the bid is, you have to have a certain amount of percentage of or I call it the in case crap happens, right? So a plumber tells you it's going to cost you $600 to fix the plumbing. He gets into the walls and stuff like that. It turns out to be $1,000. Instead of you being out $400, we take it out of this contingency to finish the job. So the contingency is really important. Architectural and engineer fees can all be rolled into it. Inspections and title updates, everything can be rolled into it. So it's a really cool program. I always say the same thing. That's funny. I got Kelly on here, but make sure you got a good contractor and make sure you got a good real estate agent. And then obviously a 203K specialist is something you're going to need to become. Some helpful tips that I use on this 203K. This was much more popular back in the bank-owned era, but I always cracked up when my correspondent would be Bank of America and they would tell me, you can't sell me a home with no utilities on. And then I'd call Bank of America, who owned the home, and I said, you got to turn these utilities on in order for me to do this mortgage. And they'd say, we can't turn the utilities on. I mean, oh my gosh. I'm like, you freaking morons. So we ended up finally finding a way that we would flip these things to 203K left and right just because we didn't have to turn the utilities on. You could have a $100 plumbing repair and you didn't have to turn the water on, When appraisals come in bad, you can order a new case number to switch it to a 203K if the current appraiser doesn't know how to do 203K and he refuses to switch it, which is really cool. You can maximize the buyer selection. And what that means is that goes back to the guy who's in the house and everything's perfect but the one room. So you can definitely do that. Because that's another thing too is I had one realtor that he loves the 203K, and this is why he loves it. He goes, where I'm from in my area, the difference in price point of a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom is enormous, right? It's huge. But it doesn't cost that much to add a bedroom. So you're talking a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom might be $100,000 difference in home value, but it only costs 40 grand to build a bedroom, you know, and that's a really awesome bedroom, by the way. It might be even less, right? So what he did for his buyers is he says, hey, look, I know you want me to only look at 4 bedrooms, but let me show you a bunch of 3 bedrooms at a much better price, and we can do this program to add a bedroom. He sold the crap out of that. I mean, literally, the price was better. The customers could afford more. It was just an all around better experience for everyone. And it was just by him, the realtor, knowing the program and being able to use it in creative ways to sell more homes.
Nice.
I'll always continue to harp on the good relationship with your contractors. It's so important. Some of the myths of the 203K, they're too expensive. Well, I just got done telling you that for $40,000, it only costs you $210 a month. That's not too expensive at all. The rates are only about a quarter higher than typical rates today. They take longer to close. Not if you have a good contractor and you're doing it with a lender who's an expert at the 203Ks. Contractors don't get paid. That just doesn't happen, period.
You've kind of taken that list approach with the contractors, right? I mean, you got a couple, 2 or 3, so you're not worried about, oh, I'm referring just one contractor only. You've got a couple you refer usually.
I refer all 3. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I laugh about it because I'm like a realtor. but I have been burned by only referring one. But I'm not an idiot. I tell everyone which one I like the most. You know, I mean, they can choose whoever they want. They don't have to pick any of the 3 as long as they're licensed and insured. But I absolutely, I tell them who I've used at my own home if they ask. You know, and then consultant. Everyone thinks you have to use a consultant. You don't if it's a streamline. It just depends on you as a company if you decide you have to use it or not. Luckily for us, we've done so many of these and we have the right people in place. We don't need a consultant unless it's a full. Whatever, and this just ends with a cool picture. So this was one of the houses we did, and then this is what it actually turned out to be. You'll get a kick out of this. This is Erica Stanton's house.
Oh, nice.
She's our director. She did it with the 203K.
Nice. That's awesome. That's awesome. Actually, I had a couple people talking to me about that recently. They're like, Fish, you're going to buy a new home soon this fall or something like that. I'm like, yeah, I probably will find a beater upper and put $100,000 into it because. $1,000. If I was buying a house right now, there's no way I wouldn't do a renovation loan. I would go find. All I would do is shop the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Get me in the neighborhood I want to be in, and that's all I would care about. Yeah, we were talking to John David Adams about that at our MMBC Phoenix event, and he showed his own personal house on the screen and kind of gave the background story, and he was talking about what the value of the house was and all the work that they did to it on the renovations. And he's like, I would have never been able to live in this neighborhood, even though I'm a decent LO. He's like, this is like a CEO neighborhood, but I got in bottom barrel pricing because nobody else wanted to touch it. Everybody was looking for turnkey in that high end price range. He got such a discount on it and put over $100,000 into it. And next thing you know, he's got like $200,000-$300,000 equity in just a few years. It's crazy.
When I drove by that house with him, I was like, really? It's like, what am I missing here? Because that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So
yeah, no, John used the rehab loan too. It's perfect. He used it perfectly. He's exactly what I would do if I was going to buy a house today. Buy the neighborhood, and then go find the crappiest dang house you can find and go do a nice rehab on it. And you'd be amazed at how much equity you can pull out of that thing.
Dig it.
For sure. I think that's the end of this.
Cool, man. Well, I think that's all we got. So if folks are always going to want to post and comment and questions and all that stuff, you guys can hit me up. You can hit Tim up. We're not hard to get a hold of. Just kind of, Facebook us or whatever. But we just wanted to jump in and encourage you guys. If you want some training on it, there's a lot of them out there. There's MGIC, Genworth. Make sure you learn the basics before you get too deep. But he and I really wanted to talk about the mindset and the sales process and how you approach it with realtors, because it's another tool to add to your belt. And if you do it the right way, you can survive some of the tough times with deals that you never thought you're going to be able to get. So,
absolutely. Thanks for having me, Fish.
Anytime, but I appreciate it, and hope everybody, comment below, and share, and all that kind of stuff. Thanks for your time, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.